Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're well. You're amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. It's Sunday, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know you've got better things to do. But we are on Idaho today. There's a few people have reached out. I was planning on going live tonight, but I can't because I'm waiting for a lead to come in as I've been rebuilding the setup because I wanted to start doing more lives, probably 3 to 4 lives a week. So once that lead comes in, the internet goes on the 5th of November, and then we're going to be on it. So look, what are we talking about? We're talking about this, right? Later on, we're going to be talking about the timeline. So keep your eyes peeled for that, where they're now saying that Bryan had time to start experimenting on people as well. Yeah, we're talking about that later. So again, keep your eyes peeled. But for now, this is the one. And the reason why I'm bringing this, because it's strange what people say. Like, there's a comment made later by one of the parents. I bet you can't guess who, when you come to weird comments. And I just thought, how bizarre. But look, Bryan Kohberger witness list. Killer planned to make surviving roommates of murder victims testify for defence. I don't really see the problem in that. I don't really see the problem. Obviously, he's pled guilty to it, so it gives everybody carte blanche to be able to say, well, he did it. He definitely did it, even though we can't even understand. It doesn't even make sense that he pled guilty. It absolutely doesn't. If you're somebody who feels that it makes sense that he pled guilty, then I can't really work that out, because it doesn't make sense that Idaho didn't push for the death penalty. That doesn't make sense. Why would they not push for the death penalty? I've said this before. Answer me down below. In what world does it make sense that you have somebody pushing that they're going to go to trial pretty much all the way through, and right at the end of it all of a sudden, not only are they not going to go to trial, they're going to plead guilty, not an Alford plea, an actual plea out, and Idaho are going to turn around and say, yeah, we're also not going to push for the death penalty in perhaps one of the most grotesque and heinous crimes that this place has ever seen, and spending around $1 million on an upgrade in their death room. Make it make sense. You can't, because it don't make sense. Dylan and Bethany Funk, who both spoke about the trauma they suffered due to the actions of Bryan Kohberger, might have been called to testify had his case gone to trial. It says, he is a hollow vessel, something less than human, a body without empathy or remorse. That is how Dylan Mortensen described Bryan Kohberger while speaking through tears at the sentencing. Tears that were later cushioned by a nice $115,000 of a man who murdered 4 of her best friends. Were they best friends? Would you leave your best friend laying on the floor in the doorway of her room, even if, right? And this is the big question, right? This is the big question that someone's going to have to answer me. So you're as far away, because people will turn around and say, I didn't know what was happening. How did they know what was happening? They didn't call 911 because they couldn't fathom what happened. They didn't think that people were being murdered. Okay, let's go with that then. Let's go with that and say they just thought that their best friend, or one of their best friends, was laying on the floor having had copious amounts of alcohol. Potentially other stuff. They would have known, they hung about together, so they would have known what their habits were around drinking and other stuff if they went down that route. And so you'd think that someone would leave their best friend laying on the floor in the doorway of their bedroom. They're trying to communicate, but they're getting no answer. So they leave it. They leave it there. Nothing. We won't do anything about it. We'll just carry on regardless. That doesn't sound like someone who's just seen their best friend laying on the floor. Unless you did think that something else had happened that would mean that I'm not leaving this fucking room. I'm not leaving this room. I'm not going to leave the house, because it weren't bad enough for me to leave the house and get the fuck out of Dodge, despite there being an exit literally outside Bethany Funk's door that they could have just fucked off out of the house and got out of it. See, this is what doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. They didn't go to sleep. We know they didn't go to sleep. They were texting, they were messaging, they were on their phones for hours. We have a dark period where everything goes dark. But they're trying to reach out to people, and it gets to the point where they then have to call other people over to check their house. None of that makes sense. So, and then they're wondering why this individual who's being accused of this crime is going to say, look, I want them to be witnesses for us because we got some questions for them. And everybody seems to be like, well, how dare you? How dare you question them? You can't question them, you're mental. You're mental, ain't you? You're fucking mental if you don't think there needed to be questions asked. I'll tell you that for nout. So it says, despite those strong feelings, Mortensen would have been called to testify by Kohberger, and his defence team had the case gone to trial in Idaho. According to a recently unsealed court dog, that's because I thought about certain someone and thought dog, obtained by People. The filing does not list any of the individuals as potential witnesses, and instead reads Bryan C. Kohberger, buying through his attorneys of record, will call the following witnesses at trial. Also on that list was Bethany Funk, the only other person to live through the night on November 13th, 2022, when Kohberger broke into her off-campus home in Moscow and massacred her roommates, Katie Gonsalves, Madison Mogans, Anna Knodel, and Ethan Chapin. The lingering trauma from that night continues to haunt Funk, which is why she could not bring herself to attend Kohberger's sentencing hearing, and instead had a friend read a statement on her behalf. Now, I thought it was to do with that she had bad teeth or something. She needed to go to the dentists, needed to go there. So she got them. Now they're saying that she couldn't go because it was lingering trauma. She didn't want to go with her friend, a person who'd shared that, one of her best mates. She didn't think she'd go there and offer some solidarity, despite previously getting tattoos and stuff. I was scared the person who did this would come for me next, Funk wrote in her statement, which was read in court by Emily Allant. We don't really know when she thought that. Was that before or after getting tattoos? Maybe she got tattoos and then thought, fuck, it might come at me now. Might come and get me because I've had a tattoo done. Funk and Mortensen were not the only Idaho students Kohberger had planned to call in his attempt to prove he was innocent of the crime. He confessed to just 2 months after filing this list with the court, which is a fucked up situation. Among the other witnesses he wanted to take the stand were Allant and her boyfriend Hunter Johnson, who were first to arrive on the scene the morning that the bodies were discovered. That's quite interesting to call them. Maybe it was to find out exactly what they had seen. What was the scene like? These disappearing and reappearing knives that we keep hearing about. And the only thing that we can't see, apart from disappearing and reappearing knives and blood that don't seem to exist, and pictures that this crime just happens to be able to block anybody from seeing anything, despite the thousands of cases worldwide where you can see everything. And I don't mean everything, but there's literally been like, no, I can't see it. Nothing to see here. Trust us, bro. Do you know what I mean? But we can't see the knife sheath. Have we seen that yet? I ain't been around the case for a few days, so have we seen it yet? Let me know down below. It says it was Johnson who discovered the bodies, at which point he quickly instructed Funk and Mortensen to exit the residence and then check to make certain there was no one hiding out in the house. Jack DeCurr, the ex-boyfriend of Gonsalves, was also on the defence witness list. Kohberger did not, however, list 2 of the other individuals who arrived on the scene that morning and had close ties to one of the victims, Hunter and Maisie Chapin. Those who attended the University of Idaho along with their triplet Ethan. Despite her own children not being called to testify, the triplets' mother, Stacy Chapin, said the fact that these students would not have to appear in court during a trial was the best thing to come out of the plea deal. Kohberger struck with everything. The best thing was that those kids didn't have to get grilled under oath in court. Can't help but think that this, again, maybe I've just been around the case too long, maybe I'm reading into it, but the best thing out of all this is that those individuals are not grilled under oath in court. Maybe asked why it took them 8 hours to call 911. and a timeline that just doesn't ever seem to make sense, which again we're going to talk about later, because they're even still trying to expand the time frame, even though we know that if the white car on this camera footage is the car that the killer drove or was driven to the scene, we know that they're still talking shit. And there were so many kids, including our own, that had been subpoenaed that no longer have this hanging over their heads. I mean, we just all get to live our life, Stacey said at the time. It was not just students either, as Kohberger planned to call 138 people in total in court, according to the witness list. There were also 53 individuals Kohberger listed as mitigation witnesses. He might call to testify during the penalty phase of his trial if he had been convicted of murder by a jury. That list included members of the murderer's family, like his sisters Amanda and Melissa, his parents Michael and Marianne, and Washington State University professor John Snyder. Kohberger worked as a teaching assistant for Snyder at Washington State University. And interesting that Bryan was also going to call in Snyder, bearing in mind that people were complaining or consistently saying that Kohberger was problematic and was being sacked and all this stuff, yet he calls someone for mitigation purposes who just happens to be the person who he was working for at the university, which they actually say is unclear why Snyder would have been called to take the stand, given that he complained about Kohberger following a verbal altercation between the pair, which resulted in the criminology department issuing Kohberger a warning about his conduct. So this is, like I say, this is quite interesting. But yeah, do you know what I mean? I just found this all fucking real odd. Real odd. Let me know what you think. What is the biggest travesty to come out of this shit show of a case? Maybe the fact still we're seeing people going on about things. It's almost like they're saying, no, we can move on, we can live our lives now, but not fucking one of them wants to. Not one of them wants to. Literally, the Gonsalves family, the other day on the Gonsalves family page, playing the food truck video on their fucking page, playing that. And it's like, oh, we look at this and we remember this, and you know, if only we'd have known it was a few hours before the tragedy happened. What the fuck? Why would you even put that on there? This is done. You want to move on, and yet to your 60 or 80 odd thousand people, the best thing you can upload is the fucking grub truck video. Make it make sense. Love you all. I'll catch you all in video 2 later, having a right rant on that one. Love you all. Mwah.